Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Let's hop in. Today is Monday, September 19th. We're back on schedule, I think, as far as the times I'd like to stream. We've got pop-up news here, but it doesn't seem like anything is new. Or if there was something new, I logged in and missed it. Which... So far, none of the notifications have been that great. I only got one daily quest there because over the weekend and I guess on Friday, I didn't really accomplish everything that is necessary. Playing a new deck, I think this Summon Special Monsters ran into some problems in particular. There is an argument here that we should start immediately with a spectate. For the accountability section, I'm not sure where I last caught up. I finished Tacoma, didn't like that game at all. And then I tried to do a game called Alchemia, which is a 69-cent game from the creator of like Cross Cells, Hex Cells. And even at 69 cents, it's not worth it. It's a book with encoded things that really require you to go online in Wikipedia and do augmented reality research for about 7 pages to find out a single code that you have to do at the very end to flip the pages to get the one achievement in the game and then interact in that one way. Otherwise, there's basically no interaction at all. Like, no controller support, no mouse. It's just left on the arrow keys to go to the left, flip the pages to the left, right on the arrow keys to flip the pages on the right. And yeah, it would have been a hard sell no matter what, even if there was a lot more game to it and a lot more interactivity to it. Inherently, it looks very pretty as a single screen game still, but inherently what it needed was a system where you solved one puzzle and then that changed the code on the paper and was used as a solution to go further. So it was perhaps codes encrypted in different kinds of encryption methods and encrypted in other types of encryption methods. For instance, if there was a simple Caesar cipher where the letter E was replaced with the letter F, which I think it was, something like that, in the game, if you had at some point been able to put your solution down in the game and interact with the actual program and say E equals F, and then that would just rewrite the book and re-render the book correctly, that would have been great. And yeah, well, security wise, it's not smart to potentially encrypt things inside of other wrappers of other encryption codes. For a video game, that really wouldn't have been a terrible idea as a way to go about it. So I ended up just doing a spotlight for this. I believe the Synchro Summon event, nope, has not started. Good. So we can just try to see if we can make it up to rank before the end of the month. A higher rank. We're probably not making it all the way to the top. I also played Shank 2 at some point. Didn't really enjoy that game because it was too short and just not really doing anything. I actively went and watched like the very first episode of Archer after playing Shank 2, and even that very first episode of Archer, the FX animated series, was a way better implementation of a similar art style, going in a lot further directions. Certainly there's just way more writing, there's way more a bit willingness to show nudity and violence in that first Archer. Archer is kind of very much out there as being really only a couple steps, I guess, below something like South Park. And I'm not even sure if South Park really shows visually that much stuff as much as what they actually just say. Alright. Let's see if that does anything for us. Nope. Okay, well then we'll do this. Activate this. We will add this to our hand. We will normal summon the monster, which will summon this, I guess, using that ability. Send that to the graveyard and that to the graveyard. So yeah, I may be getting all of this out of order somewhat, but after those games, I then went and played. Oh, what did I play? Man, I've been burning through games over the weekend, which inherently means I didn't actually work on my Raspberry Pi guest Wi-Fi setup at all, but I need to do that, but I didn't, so whatever. But I did burn through games, and eventually I played Darksiders 3. And so I've done like 3 hours now in Darksiders 3. But I feel like there was another game between Shank 2 and Alchemia that I also played fairly shortly. Yes, I played the Beginner's Guide. And it's hard to really recommend the Beginner's Guide. First of all, there's a certain level of uncertainty about whether any of the story is true. Whether the narrator is actually the character, whether the creator of the Beginner's Guide is even actually the writer of the Stanley Parable. Like, there's questions, certainly, that I can't for 100% certainty believe for certain are true. But it kind of doesn't matter, because while the message is great and the message gets revealed to you fairly nicely in the last 2 hours of the Beginner's Guide, the first, I would say, 4 to 8 hours of the Beginner's Guide, we're getting more and more animations with all these attacks. They finally started making animations. Yeah, the first 4 hours at least of the Beginner's Guide are too long, and at a certain level, you are being tricked throughout the entirety of the Beginner's Guide to walk through whether either Source Engine asset flips or Unity Engine asset flips. And if they are real games and the story is true in the Beginner's Guide, they are garbage games. And the first premise at the beginning of the Beginner's Guide is that these are not garbage games, but actually interesting avant-garde games that you should really be amazed with. But they aren't. They're really, really bad games. I wouldn't even really call them vertical slices, because they don't really accomplish the goal of a vertical slice. They are just terrible, terrible games, and you spend at least 6 hours going through these terrible games, and they don't improve, and the character that supposedly created these games is definitely being depicted as having never really wanted to improve, or having ever learned to improve or add anything to it. As a video game critic, that drove me up the wall, certainly. There's a story and a narrative around the Beginner's Guide that I feel needed some level of different medium as an option. Like, it really needed something different to be something like a story or a movie, not an attempt at an interactive video game, because you just do not get anything from the interactivity of playing these bad games. It really, really sucks. I really would have preferred a game called The Beginner's Guide that had that kind of general premise of going and looking at some programmer's first few games to actually care about the coding and the programming and the game design in any level. But it really doesn't. And certainly my feeling around The Beginner's Guide centers a lot around having spent years now looking at every single game that's come out on Steam and just seen way better asset flips, and a lot of asset flips that look a lot like the Beginner's Guide games. Like, and yeah, that was the problem I kept running into at the Beginner's Guide. So even when I got to the end and the reveal, like, I kind of figured out what the reveal was going to be to a certain level, but like, it just didn't matter. And inherently, the Beginner's Guide wants you to really care about the narrator to a certain level, on certain aspects at least, and it wants you to really care about the creator of the games, whom the narrator is talking about, and I just couldn't really care about either one of them, because as far as I know, they're fictional, and even if they weren't fictional people, they are just random people that I have no relationship to at all, so why would I want to care about them? You could say that about any story, certainly, but usually there is character development and backstory that leaned you down the path of caring about characters, which just aren't there at the Beginner's Guide. At the end of the Beginner's Guide, the person who made all the games you're looking at, you really don't know who that person is at all. You can make some opinions and form some guesses, but you have no clue. No clue at all. So yeah, after trying kind of an experimental game in one way with Alchemia, trying an experimental game another way with the Beginner's Guide, it was time to get back to just regular old turn your brain off stupid video games, and so I decided to start playing Darksiders 3, which I was somewhat disappointed in the first hour of playing Darksiders 3 to find that I needed to drop all the way down to story mode. I couldn't even beat the first boss in balance mode, which is the second easiest difficulty. There is just a high difficulty, high gap, I think, between that. The new control scheme seems fine. I haven't felt any urge to get rid of that. To go back to the classic difficulty mode in Darksiders 3. The menu doesn't so far look as good as the first game, and it seems like it's trying fairly hard to have to have elements from the second game when arguably maybe there shouldn't be as many elements from the second game. It's been so long, it's kind of hard to really even remember what was going on with Darksiders 1 and 2 and remember specific characters. go ahead and do that, then that, then that. See if there's any value in banishing that card to the graveyard. See if we can get back on track now, or if this guy is just going to wreck us. Yeah, but overall, I'm not very deep into the story of Darksiders 3, so there's not a lot to say. There's a lot of visual pop-in that feels like a bit of a problem in Darksiders 3 when you're turning around and supposed to be jumping around and doing all kinds of crazy whip attack maneuvers as playing as Fury. Fury's hair and her cloth that is part of her belt, or cloth sash as part of her belt, it feels like it is a little bit too visual compared to the other horsemen who actually don't look particularly good. And it feels like it's probably pushing the GPU by probably too many percentage points as far as physics and visuals there for no good reason. But yeah, there's really not a lot to say there. It feels like it's going to be slightly closer in its open world to the first game, and is maybe just trying to integrate some of the story elements. There is a weirdness in Darksiders 3 in that they're introducing yet another character that I've met so far. So there's just like too many characters, which makes it questionable whatever that mythical Darksiders 4 would be as far as who the final boss would be. And yeah, there was one cutscene that I've seen so far where I blinked and I missed it apparently, and I don't know if Fury's horse gets stabbed by a sword in the scene, or if Fury's horse gets summoned out of the ground like all the horsemen's horses do and had swords already inside of it. So I'm confused there. I assume that's a desire for them to be a little bit more family friendly while still probably having an M rating. And then I'm keeping a particular ear out for any misogyny against Fury as being the only female horseman, and there was one bad guy who called her a witch instead of using the B word, and that mushy middle doesn't feel particularly good. I think for the Darksiders series, since there's 2 games before it that were fairly family friendly, they should have just not gone that direction. It doesn't really make the most sense that there would be any misogyny between demons, or in this case it was the 7 deadly sin, talking to a Nephilim horseman of the apocalypse. Yeah, I've probably forgotten more about the Darksiders series than I remember, but there's weird off points where the Nephilim are supposed to be children between angels and demons in this game instead of angels and humans in the apocryphal text, as they're usually described. And then the monsters you're fighting in Darksiders 3 don't so much feel like demons so far as the generic overworld monsters. They feel like something different, and you're seeing a lot of corpses of what looks more like demons again, so Now you're just kind of fighting monsters of some sort. Which that's an interesting idea to say that you're in a fantasy world where there have just been entire generations of different types of species of monsters that have moved in and become the enemies instead of it sticking with your same old generic vampires or zombies more often. Another thing is they bring humans back into the story in this apocalypse world, and that feels a little off too. Like, inherently, the core concept of Darksiders was to have 4 games that were distinctly different, and I think that was a mistake. And I think because of THQ going out of business and then THQ Nordic and Brazer Group getting Darksiders, at that point they should have said, no, let's actually just kind of keep all these games to be an Ocarina of Time style 3D adventure game, and because that worked in the first game, and even the changes in the second game, which were fairly drastic, didn't really work. But yeah, being more focused on the gameplay style is one step, but really the story was always second towards the experiment, I think, in the minds of the creators, and really the story should probably be first. And the story is kind of this edgelord awesome experience of playing as the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse during the apocalypse, and that's a good premise, but the actual implementation of that feels a little loose and just suiting the needs of whatever dungeon you want to add to the game. So if you want a dungeon with a giant spider queen, you just make a dungeon with a giant spider queen, and then you give a name to that character as the giant spider queen, and then all of a sudden you have this character that wasn't part of your original concept and doesn't inherently connect to the overall concept. But yeah, it's very surface level at that point. There's the depth, the planning. Inherently, if you were to do a rewrite of the story of the Darksiders series and a reboot of the game, I think you could tighten it up a lot better. Perhaps not have it be even a trilogy, and instead have it be 2 games, maybe 3, because I could see a game where Darksiders 1 and Darksiders 2 got merged together as far as the experience, and then Darksiders 3 and whatever Darksiders 4 potentially would get merged together, and then you could make a trilogy 3rd game that where all 4 of the characters have different sections in the 3rd theoretical alternate universe Darksiders series. Because had that original concept of having 4 distinctly different games with 4 distinctly different gameplay mechanics, had that really happened, then any game that would have had all 4 of the Darksiders series would have inherently had to have very different sections where you play as one of the different characters doing things in a very different way. And I can't imagine that would have really worked if there was, for instance, a puzzle horseman, and every time you got into a puzzle level you had to play as the puzzle horseman, or war would have been the only action horseman, so all of the action sequences you were playing as war. That doesn't really make sense. Apparently Return to Monkey Island early review scores are out, and they seem to be pretty high, which, okay, great. That's exactly what I would want to hear. I want to see a situation where um, where the Return to Monkey Island is as good as it could possibly be, so that it could carve out a new path potentially they could carve out a path towards the Monkey Island series having a lead, basically, like having a focus and a guide and somebody steering the Monkey Island series, and it being Ron Gilbert is nice since that was the original writer. Also means that we are likely to have more passion behind the Monkey Island series in the future, instead of them just making games to try and sell. I wanted to point out that Naughty Dog here is saying that Drake's Fortune released 15 years ago. Thank you for doing, thank you fans for joining Nathan Drake on his fortune hunting adventures. Inherently, in that 15 years, the Drake saga of Uncharted, the original characters of Uncharted with Nathan Drake, have been treated pretty poorly, because at a 15-year anniversary, instead of just putting out a picture, you should be able to put out a link towards either a still playable version of the first game or a remastered version of the first game of Drake's Fortune. And neither one of those really exist on PC. I'm not sure if you can really play Drake's Fortune even on a PlayStation 5, or if it isn't one of the larger than you would think list of games that were PlayStation 3 only and didn't get a lot of support or didn't get upgraded to be playable on the PlayStation 4. Countering that anniversary, we have the 10-year anniversary of Borderlands 2, in which Gearbox and on the Borderlands Twitter is putting out a bunch of videos, and they have a shift code for a gun for Borderlands 2. I suppose it is not also the anniversary, like a 5-year anniversary or something like that for Borderlands 3. I suppose they aren't released on the same day. And I don't think there's much more you could do to support Borderlands 2, as it is pretty much still for sale and still completely playable. A lot of emphasis on Tiny Tina still from Borderlands 2, which is a little weird. Like, it feels like they definitely became more obsessed with Tiny Tina, particularly in the past couple of years. But yeah, Borderlands 2 as a concept is way more supported as a game, way more playable. Anybody can play it now if they want to. YouTube apparently has put out a 31-page overview on making YouTube Shorts, which I guess brevity is not the spice of life in an overview guide as far as how they suggest to make YouTube Shorts. 31 page is fairly excessive, particularly considering other YouTube responses and guidances. I saw a YouTuber make the claim, of which I imagine to a certain extent it is somewhat true, that almost every single way you could contact YouTube is run by an artificial intelligence bot, and that's why you never get any real humans or human responses, because there is simply a program that has been programmed to guide the conversation towards pointing towards a link to some web page to just get people frustrated and give up. Unfortunately, that is really just another example of how bad customer service is good business nowadays. And lack of competition makes it incredibly hard to say something like, oh, I'll stop using YouTube and I'll move over to Twitch or something like that, because I'm sure Twitch themselves also has AI responses, middleware software handling most comments. And at a certain level, it almost makes sense to have AIs be running all of your social media sites and customer service sites, because you're not gonna ever hire enough people to really handle that any other way. My favorite lewd waifu game, Destiny Child, has added a sweeping feature which lets you run through more of the dailies faster, which has really improved the experience quite a bit for some of the old stuff. Although inherently it is still just saying that they can't get rid of or ever stop giving the daily quests, because that would feel like that would be a ripoff. Where honestly it probably would be better if they abandoned some of the daily quests and just gave you daily login bonuses instead, so all you would have to do is just log into the game to get those daily bonuses. However, I am still somewhat struggling to get the dailies done, because I'm still spending a lot of time playing other games on my phone. That's what I'm doing right now, is I'm also trying to play, so I'm playing on my phone, distracting myself. Knock on wood, I think I finally figured out the problem with my Wi-Fi. The suggestions on the DDWRT website for the beacon interval and the DTIM interval, whatever that even means, are apparently just wrong. And so I had to, through painstaking research, figure out what the default settings were for those two settings and set it back. It's 100 on the beacon interval, 2 on the DTIM interval, and pretty much anything that's not standard won't work, or has a high chance of not working, including a short preamble and a short GI if you want to have these 5 gigahertz for 802.11 or AC. You have to disable that to follow the standards for 80 hertz or 160 hertz channels. And once I did that, that worked a lot better. which really implies that the short GI and all of that is probably not something that should have ever been. What it obviously is that there's been a lot of these different Wi-Fi standards, and they've added a lot of experimental technologies in each of these Wi-Fi standards to try to get a faster connection, but it's been done with not enough oversight, really, or just kind of a backward and forward compatibility desire. So what might work for 802.11a would not work for 802.11b, but would not work for G, would not work for N. And it creates, particularly on the DDWRT custom router firmware, a lot of options, a lot of advanced options that you should just never touch, because touching them is not going to get you faster speed without also getting you off standard enough that some device somewhere is not going to work. And that is the one thing I don't like about DWRT. For as much as I love it, and as much as it has helped my experience by allowing me to set up ad blocking on my internet and lots of other features, the one thing I don't like about it is particularly the Wi-Fi instability that I've managed to create for myself, and the constant tinkering, noticing the problem. But assuming I have fixed it, I have gone this entire week without any buffering in videos, any random weird buffering, or any other weird loss of connectivity on the Wi-Fi. And my connection speeds now are higher than they've ever even been, by being able to enable even higher channel bandwidth. Now, maybe that knocked a couple of devices out of actively connecting to the 5 gigahertz spectrum, and now they're back to the 2.4 gigahertz connection. But that may be a good thing too, because really I would only really prefer that the newest of the newest laptops and cell phones connect to the 5 gigahertz and suck out as much bandwidth and have a premium experience from that. Everything else can just be on the 2.4 gigahertz, getting slower 50 megabits per second style connections instead of 500 megabits plus style connections on the 5 gigahertz. Of course, none of that has anything to do with YouTube News. I don't know if we talked about this, but Star Wars Jedi Knight Jedi Academy was released 19 years ago on the 17th. So that would be slightly older news. Oh, another thing to mention as far as news that's not really that big of news. Bridget from the, I believe, Chrono Cross series, the creator of Bridget, who for 20 years has been a male twin that, because of a prophecy slash rumor in his village, said that male twins were bad luck, had been raised as a female and was just basically a cross-dresser slash anime trap character. Well, the creator now has come out directly in support of what the Western people were saying, in that Bridget is now transgendered. I think inherently a lot of that comes from the Japanese creators not really caring what they say to Westerners at all, and just being willing to support and toe the line of whatever the Westerners say and whatever the Westerners want. It is very Japanese to just blindly agree with somebody, even though you don't in your heart actually agree, but I can't really speak to what is in the creator's heart. I can just speak to the fact that for 20 years, Bridget as a character has been a trap character, a cross-dressing character, not a transgender person, not someone who felt or acted or even spoke that like they were female. And so now the Japanese audience is kind of shocked by this new revelation or announcement, in that it just feels very off and very forced. Because it definitely feels like people really loved Bridget as a character and the way he was written. I guess maybe now she. I don't even know what term. I've gotten confused here, even myself. But yeah, obviously, this was as it progressed, as I was observing this situation, this was pushed through by like the voice actors and the writers and the publishers in the West first. And so if this was something that was naturally a clarification or a retcon that the creator wanted to do, it's shocking on a different level, certainly, that a retcon would be announced and said by the Western people first, not the actual creator first. And if they said this is just our retcon, a reimagining of how the story is gone, and I think they would have gotten a better reception. I think there is a way in which you can say, you know what, we know for 20 years it's been this way. We know that's the narrative and the character you love and have come to love, but too bad we're retconning it, we're changing it. But we know, we'll admit it's a retcon, we'll admit some people won't like this, but it is something that we feel will create a better narrative and a better story and a better character going forward. I think you could win over some people that way, but often, almost every time something like this happens, where it's a retcon to push SJW social agendas, really, and it has to be classified as an SJW agenda because you're changing the backstory of a fictional animated character. You're not really helping real world people or increasing representation or giving jobs to like voice actors or anything. But yeah, every time this happens, they inherently try to pretend like that was the way it always was, and that was the original intent, and that they're not changing things or erasing one character or one character's story and character development in favor of another. There definitely are characters, certainly, where you could fix that. Like, there's a new Quantum Leap reboot, and the actor, I believe, if I saw the trailer right, who's going to be playing Sam Beckett, is an Asian character. That, I think, works fairly well. I don't know if he really is playing Sam Beckett or if he's going to be playing his own character. He probably is going to be playing his own character. But that works kind of well because now every time he goes back in time and lives someone else's life in the past, inherently a significant amount of the people who he will embody in this Quantum Leap reboot will be a white male, as most of the stories in the past are white males. So a different person inside the body of a white male gives more work to that Asian actor, where otherwise in the original game you had a white male playing all the characters he was jumping into the body of. So every time he jumped into a female, he was taking away acting work from a female actor, to some extent. They had a lot of mirror scenes where you saw the person's body he was actually in, but they didn't get a lot of lines of dialogue or acting at that. And Quantum Leap was always about social commentary anyway, so this opens the door to just more of that. I could also certainly see looking at some of the badly written characters in stories and just saying, yeah, let's just retcon it. Let's just change it. Gamers in particular are not upset with retcons or changed. The whole Dad of War retcon worked amazingly well. Changing how that character acted and how those stories went worked really, really well for the God of War series. The retconning or rebooting of the character's Lara Croft didn't hurt the story too much. People were a little bit upset with it, but mostly because of it just not, the new characters still not really feeling like they were in line with what a Lara Croft character should be, in the sense that she wasn't just really badass enough in the first game to be called Lara Croft, even if this was her first mission. Let's see, who else has been retconned? At a certain level, Princess Peach, Princess Daisy, and a couple other of the princesses that have been saved in the Mario series are just retcons of a different damsel in distress, or Pauline from Donkey Kong, and nobody really cares about that. It's not it's not a huge controversy when Mario Galaxy came out that you weren't really saving Peach and you were working with Rosalina. I think slowly Bowser has been retconned a little bit to be more of a friendly rival than an actual enemy. I think pretty much half of the Sonic games have retconned Eggman and there hasn't been any real problems there. The Force Unleashed changing things about Star Wars was a good thing. In fact, if they went back, particularly for the bad movies of Star Wars, and retconned quite a few of the characters and changed some things, I don't know if Star Wars fans would complain any more than they already are. So it's not changes, it's just that the changes have to be kind of good. I'm still considering potentially trying to look at Metacritic for user reviews. I feel like that's going to be hard, though. Notably here, Metal Hellsinger having a 10 out of 10 by user scores, and then an 82 out of 100 by review scores, and that confuses the issue some more, in that the entire setup is weird to have different scales, scoring systems for user scores versus review scores. It's a little weird to even have a segregation between video game journalists' user review scores and user review scores. in the turn there. Suffice it to say, though, it would be difficult to use this as anything informative, and inherently I would have to click on something, and when I'm clicking on something, then I'd have to figure out how to look at the next page to figure out why there might be a distinctive difference in scoring between the user score and the critic score. So I probably should have canceled. Probably should have activated this first. Do I still have time? Maybe. We'll try. At the very least, it'll get rid of the prompt. Over the weekend, I imagine... Let me activate this too. This might work fairly well for me. Over the weekend, I imagine not that much video game news has happened. The biggest video game news, I think, is that a hacker was able to steal some early development images of GTA 6 and put them on the internet. And Rockstar has confirmed that they are real and is trying to DMCA and remove it from the internet now. I don't really follow along and understand why gamers would care. These are early developments for GTA 6, and there's no reason to believe GTA 6 is going to be anything other than average at best. It very possibly could be total garbage. Remember, the last GTA games to be released for purchase were the awful mobile ports upscaled for PC, which they still really haven't fixed to a satisfactory level, I don't believe, and the GTA Online platform that is really just designed to let you gamble as much as possible. So I don't know where this hype or this focus is really coming from. Even the Red Dead Redemption stuff really doesn't come off as being particularly good. Alright, I'm just gonna summon this, even though I could special summon some other things. Maybe I should have special summoned some things. Maybe that would have worked for me. Alright, let's go through the Gamatsu article. I mean the Video Game Chronicles articles. We had already talked about, I think, the PlayStation Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone content being revealed. We already talked about Vince Zampella thinking EA strayed too far from what Battlefield is with 2042. Yeah, these are definitely coming off as these are somewhat old articles. Certain Affinity has appointed a industry veteran, Paul Sams, as president and COO. It aims to become a household name with the help of the ex-Blizzard and Ready at Dawn executive. Which, okay. The names of game companies don't really matter that much. Even big names like 343 Industries are barely known amongst most gamers. You get more clout just by having a bigger multi-industry corporate name behind you. For instance, a Sony name, a Warner Brothers names, anything like that gets you more recognition in most people's minds than having Ubisoft or certain affinity. Although Ubisoft is pretty recognizable. But yeah, certain affinity, Cyan, Double Fine, things like that are just not amazingly recognizable. Dimbold, Fulbright. You could probably name hundreds of indie companies that have made like one interesting game that you've probably heard of, but don't have the Embracer Group's style of lineup in which they've just acquired enough companies or enough products to start to have a real lineup. Even if you look at like Telltale has quite a lot of games under the name Telltale, the old Telltale did, and still it's fairly believable that people wouldn't recognize Telltale or just confuse it for Traveler's Tales, which is even a smaller company, but also has a ton of games under its belt in the form of Lego games. If I could do anything here, I would, but I summoned the wrong thing. I shouldn't have summoned two of these back to back. If I hadn't done that, I would have won this turn. Though I have a decent chance of winning anyways. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Hollow Knight Silksong is officially coming to PS5 and PS4. Good to know. Street Fighter 6 full roster has been officially revealed. This time they are saying this as the full roster. At a certain level, I kind of wonder if Street Fighter, and particularly Street Fighter 6, is just a little too close to almost becoming JoJo's Bizarre Adventure levels of animation. There was always Blanca, there was always E Honda as characters. They were always a little bit weird, but when they started adding characters like Jury as characters, they're starting to get a little too random. Maybe they should have taken a few steps back towards being more realistic in their appearance. I'm not sure we have any fighting game now at this point that is fairly realistic amongst the fighters. Maybe that's a mistake, and maybe it doesn't matter because maybe nobody cares if the fighters are realistic, but yeah, I think somebody should probably go that way, whereas most games are not going that way, and particularly the 2D fighters tend to go particularly fairly crazy in their depictions. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, as a comparison, is very wild in its art style and stands out very much because of that. PlayStation has confirmed that VR2 won't be compatible with PSVR. So there's just like no backwards compatibility at all, which sounds like a deal killer immediately. Modern Warfare 2 beta release date and how to get a code. Is an article from Video Games Chronicle. It's a little surprising. I guess this is the only way how I can even make this slightly video game relevant. It's a little surprising that the UK-based website Video Games Chronicle is bothering to put out anything if they are in the UK, because it seems like the UK has, for the most part, completely stopped because the Queen died for, I think they said something like 2 weeks of mourning. So seems like the thing to do there is probably to just stop working too. Although, yeah, maybe it doesn't quite work that way. Maybe you can't just stop doing your job for 2 weeks and expect your economy to still be there. Although inherently in the pandemic, it really did seem to give more evidence that a lot of people can do their jobs from home or just not do their jobs at all for 2 weeks, and it doesn't collapse the economy. It's kind of reassuring to think that maybe the made up money of the economy has just become a system that can live for at least a short time on its own, and people being used as workhorses is not necessary for that system. There is a fantasy alternate universe out there where if everybody was given just a certain number of shares or bonds at birth, and that was all you ever got, and you could just live off of the dividends from those bonds, that might work. Or everybody is just a stock trader. Of course, I've seen far too many people on Reddit trading stocks and losing money left over, hand over fist. The Cyberpunk 2077 Netflix series is now on Netflix. I haven't gotten around to watching it, but I probably should. Speaking of Netflix series, also Dogs in Space Season 2 is on Netflix, which is something I enjoyed. It's not video game related, but it was something I enjoyed. Tune. Let's activate this just to see if this works for us. And then Amazon Prime has a new episode of their world tour slash yeah, I think it's called World Tour Car Show. So I imagine every Friday you'll get a new episode there. So I managed to watch a decent amount of TV for as much work as I got done over the weekend. I do think there is a chance that the Cyberpunk 2077 Netflix anime will be good. Much more than I think Cyberpunk 2077 has a high chance of being much better than it is at this current moment. I suppose I'm just gonna always pick the first 6 cards to banish. I need one thing added to my hand, and I'll take that, I guess. And then I guess we'll take that. I don't know if I can really win here. I'm still trying to learn. Yeah, still trying to learn if this is the right move, or what you can do with this deck and what you can't. That being said, Video Games Chronicled, I don't even know why I'm saying that being said, because I didn't say anything. Video Games Chronicle points out that Cyberpunk 2077 seems to be enjoying a resurgence of players, which with the new anime, I assume, being the most logical reason for that. Xbox suggests more original Japanese are coming. So much has come, but there's even more that's going to come in the future. As far as the Tokyo Game Show announcements, I would also have to say that does feel like we got what we got, and we're probably not going to get any more. I'm just gonna toss everything. Yeah, for the past 3 or 4 years I've tried to watch the Tokyo Game Show, and I have been fairly disappointed in that there aren't more announcements. It doesn't really feel like it's in the nature of the Japanese to bundle all of their announcements together in one giant show like E3. Arguably, that's probably smarter, and E3 is obviously a failure, so it's kind of hard to say you should do like E3 when E3 didn't succeed. Xbox also says it hasn't given up on Final Fantasy XIV despite a 3-year silence. Phil Spencer pledged to bring back the MMO to Xbox formats in 2019, which I imagine Square Enix probably just doesn't care to have Final Fantasy XIV on the Xbox consoles, because Square Enix probably just doesn't care about Xbox sales, because Xboxes don't sell in Japan. MMOs on a console in general are a little bit of a weird thing. Yeah. There is also a danger, as my nieces and nephews potentially get older, that I need to get them into PC gaming even earlier than I thought I would do that, because they are seemingly burning through video games very fast, and they're currently being limited to Switch games, which is a great way for little kids to be limited to specific games, whereas the Steam Family Share option is going to take a lot of work. You're going to have to be fairly careful about what games you let them install, what games you let them play, as far as the 1,000+ games I have on my Steam account with the Family Share. But yeah, I do suspect this next generation of gamers probably should be pushed into PC gaming even faster. PC gaming on Steam with Family Share still feels like a much better offering as far as just price and variety compared to PlayStation Plus or Xbox Games Live, or Xbox Live, whatever it's called, because the games on Family Sharing on Steam can be played at any time. There's no time limit. Games don't appear and disappear to any significant amount. Let's see. Phil Spencer again must have been in a podcast or something. So he says there's currently nothing to say about a possible scale-bound revival, which, yeah, probably means that they have staggered down to it's on the back burner. Maybe every now and then they have a meeting about it, or try to think about that, but I don't think there's really any major interest in that happening on Microsoft's part. And that is definitely the right response to have when somebody asks about when somebody asks you about something that you're just not ready to talk about, is to say, I currently have nothing to say. So often we've seen people in charge say, no, that's not happening, it's never happening, and just closing the door when there really is no reason to close the door, or they try to be too flippant about it and they go, well, anything's possible, or stay tuned, as if there is going to be an announcement when there really isn't. Let's see. I already talked about the GTA 6 leaks. Allegedly over 90 videos circulated, over an hour of development footage. I think I may have seen some of it, but I couldn't really even tell you if I saw some of it or if I just saw other footage of other GTA games. But if what I saw is the early development of GTA 6, I'm not seeing anything surprising or amazing. It is almost certainly just going to be another GTA game. Imagine what a better looking, slightly bigger, slightly smoother running GTA 5 would be, with a female protagonist, at least at times, as an option, and that's pretty much what you should be imagining at this point, GTA 6. I think, if anything, these leaks have just built more hype. I seriously doubt it would kill any hype. Inherently, if a hacker stole development footage from a gold disc, that is to say, it is feature locked and everything you could possibly see in the game is there. If they stole that and leaked that months ahead of its launch, I still don't think that would really kill the hype for most games. So yeah, I just don't think leaks ever really hurt a company as much as companies pretend like they do. I know companies love to control the message, but inherently that's just companies loving to control the narrative and the message. I will also say that every time they talk about a hacker, I always just imagine it's somebody who just socially engineered another person, an employee, and I think that's exactly what happened in this scenario, is that they socially engineered a person to get access to an internal VPN, and was from that point able to access what was probably shared documents. As far as access control of files go, there really isn't an amazingly great system out there that's easy to set up, particularly when you're working in a collaborative environment. Like, there is potentially some ways that you could go crazy with it. You could, say, shut down servers or lock down access outside of business hours, which might help a little bit, but probably wouldn't. You can try to limit specific files to specific departments or specific people. All of those are easily done in something like Linux, and they're easily done in something like, well, no, that's the problem, is that they're not easily done in Linux, really, and they're not easily done in Windows with like a Active Directory setup, and that's the issue. What you probably would need is all files on the network setup level to be encrypted, and then you have to plug in a YubiKey to de-encrypt and access the file. And then the actual files themselves should probably just be on a fairly public shared drive. because there's just not enough. It's really not that much technology or security built around sharing files. That's easy, and it really is the easy part that's the problem. Like, it can be done, certainly, but anything that's difficult will be done wrong. Yeah, I think your best bet, everything has to be encrypted at all times, which would take more processing power. You have to have a YubiKey to de-encrypt every single file, or something like that. A USB security key that you plug in, some physical hardware that has an encryption key on it. Full disk encryption on the computers themselves is still not really enough. It needs to be file per file encryption, and maybe you could have some custom code or software written that encrypts all the files as soon as they're uploaded to a network shared drive. Two specific encryption keys that only work, match those USB security keys. Yeah, that would be, I guess, one way to do it. And at a certain level, then you almost want to have no hard drives in the end users' PCs for them to even copy things to a hard drive, which that really wouldn't work for programming. But that's what you would want to do, is you'd want the files to always stay on the network drive and just have really fast network access to those files, and that's kind of undoable. It's not reasonable. At a point in the future, it might be a point where they get to that. Moving on, as far as video game news. Final Fantasy XVI's next trailer could be due next month, says the producer. Which I guess is yay. I don't think Final Fantasy XVI has really caught people's attention. It does look very much like just what a modern JRPG fantasy game would be, without really going in any special direction. Take-Two is striking down some of the GTA 6 leaked footage, confirming its legitimacy. They've come out and directly confirmed it already. So they were doing the DMCA strikes even before they confirmed that it was actually stolen stuff. This is a weird sentence, certainly, though. GTA 6 leaker claims he's looking to negotiate a deal with Rockstar. The leaks have flooded social media since they first emerged on Sunday morning. Inherently, I don't know what deal he thinks he would get, unless he's claiming he's just got a lot more he can leak, and the 60 videos were just the tip of the iceberg, as it were, as far as how much more he could leak. And I just don't know how much Rockstar really wants to keep hidden. I don't even know how much it really hurts Rockstar to have its game leaked. I don't personally think it hurts the hype around GTA, but are there really a bunch of people even trying to make GTA clones at this point? We've had a lot of low effort GTA clones still coming out on Steam fairly frequently, but with the exception of the Saints Row series reboot that just failed, who are we? Who's really going to rip them off and take ideas or visuals and come out earlier or make a better product? There is a clean hands doctrine, frankly, for copyright infringement that makes it way more dangerous for even a bad actor who is just actively trying to make a GTA clone to spend their time and pour their energy over looking at the leaks to potentially figure out some visual element that might indicate some gameplay mechanic or some trick that would make a better experience or make a better game. Let's go ahead and banish that. Summon that. Let's go ahead and return this to deck. And I guess return this to the deck. That was probably the wrong thing. Return. Alright, well, I think I've got this more than it might seem. Attack here. Let's just activate this to get rid of it. Activate this effect. Toss this. Interesting, it didn't get destroyed. Why did it not get destroyed? Oh, I potentially have lost here. I don't know if I really even want to play anymore. I need to come back and see if I've special summoned anything, which I probably haven't, and then probably need to just play with my other deck. Like, to get back to the GTA leaks, looking at this, if this screenshot is really a leak, what does this really tell you? You have a female character, she's wearing pants, she's wearing a coat and a shirt with a necklace, and she's got a cell phone. That's not anything special as far as visuals or gameplay mechanics that make any sense. Look in the background, you just have chairs and slot machines, so it's a casino. Who cares? There's a security guard like guy. It looks like there's a woman in a dress. There's more slot machines. There's a guy over here. There's a guy over here. Like, none of this isn't something that you could have just gone to a casino to copy if you were trying to do something like that. Like, that doesn't benefit anybody trying to make a game. It doesn't benefit anybody trying to make a new GTA experience. Whatever GTA 6 looks like in its final product will inevitably be copied and cloned. But that will happen after it's released as much as it might happen before when it was released. Speaking of leaks, we also have over 40 minutes of Diablo 4 gameplay having seemingly been leaked. Which, okay. Like, so what? You're gonna see maybe an hour of gameplay of GTA 4. I can also, I mean Diablo 4. I can imagine fairly easily what Diablo 4 is going to look like and play like from the trailers that have already been shown. It's going to look like the trailers and play like Diablo 3. I don't even have any major fear of a marketplace being added that's crazy, or microtransactions being added that are super crazy. There might be some level of crazy microtransactions, but I don't think there's going to be a ton of it. Worst case scenario is that in Diablo 4 or the GTA leaks, it shows off some element in the game, such as microtransactions or loot boxes, that people hate, and because people hate it, that creates a negative feedback loop of some sort around the game. But that, at a certain level, isn't even the fault of the leaker, as much as the creators of the game or the publishers of the games demanding some gameplay element that people aren't going to like. We still have 20 duels levels to go. Ranked duels do 26 more and I'll get that done. More and more of these lifetime achievements are closer than ever to being finished forever. Let's see. Let's change decks back to our Zodiac Tri-Brigade and play with this, and hopefully we can get the daily quest done and get a couple wins. And then we'll switch back. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says the Pokemon Company denies that it has issues with Nuzlocke runs. It was alleged that it erased people from its creator program for doing these runs. I don't even know what a Nuzlocke run is. A Nuzlocke run is a playthrough of the game that can have numerous rules, but the main two are a permadeath run in which Pokemon feigns it must be released, and a rule that players can only catch the first wild Pokemon they encounter in each area and no others. Which, honestly, this feels like some YouTuber somewhere is just making a claim to get some clout and get some views more than anything else. That if the Pokemon Company in particular did hate Nuzlocke runs, it would be an internal thing that they would never say out loud, and I don't think they would actually actively get rid of streamers because of that. I don't think they would care that much. It is a little interesting how the Pokemon Company, while it is mostly owned by Nintendo as a parent company, is its own separate thing, and you have a weird situation in which Pokemon Lego sets are actually Pokemon Mega Block sets, not by Lego, but then the Super Mario Brothers Lego sets are actually Lego sets. So, two different competitors happening there. I'm gonna activate this. I have to rethink my entire strategy playing as a different deck, and I really don't know if I can wrap my head around playing two decks. Let's see. An Xbox exec has shared her support for Rockstar following a GTA leak. Sarah Bond says her thoughts are with the developers. This is part of the hysteria, I think, around leaks, first of all, and selectivism in general. Is that, first of all, it's not news for somebody to try to be nice on Twitter and put something out, even if they are doing it publicly and being kind of narcissistic when they are putting out their public, visible support. That being said, they're making it like developers are going to lose their jobs because of their leaks. There's potentially one person in GTA that might lose their job because of the leak, and that would be the person who is socially engineered and potentially broke security protocol to have the leak, to let the leak happen in the first place. Or potentially maybe the IT security department if they didn't have procedures and security locked down tight enough. But almost certainly neither of those scenarios is actually going to happen, and while there might be a reprimand at most against the IT department or the IT person in general, or the person who is socially engineered, almost certainly nothing's going to happen there. The idea that all the developers at GTA are now at risk of losing their jobs is ridiculous, or that GTA 6 is going to be worse or suffer in any way, I think is ridiculous. If this was perhaps proprietary code that was being released instead, I could almost see an argument that it could hurt the company, but I find that hard to believe. Even in that case, you'd have to leak almost the entirety of all the code you've written from GTA 6 before it would even start to feel like that could possibly be an issue. Alright, so this is... we'll just go through this fairly quickly. And just playing one game here should get all the special summons done. But effectively, it really is just not news to talk about somebody sending their support and people sending support in general. It's nice when somebody does something nice, certainly, and it's nice when you see somebody doing something nice, but usually when they're doing it in a public venue like Twitter or however they're sending their support instead of a private email, they are doing it for their own benefit, not to actually send support. There's definitely an idea that good deeds should be done in secret, which maybe doesn't inherently mean bad deeds should be done in public, but even that would probably be better. But yeah, it definitely comes off more like it is just a slow news week when all they can talk about is GTA 6 leaks because it's gonna get them some views, or they think it'll get them some views. Let's see if this works. So you can activate a trap. Alright, well then, let's activate this and cancel that. And let's see what happens. Okay, I think that worked. And this one apparently doesn't have enough to activate. Yeah, which I guess that's true. Take-Two, which I don't think has really any connection to Rockstar, has also cleared out a GTA 6 forum and subreddit following a leak. Although I don't know how you clear out a subreddit. I guess maybe Take-Two somehow owned or controlled and moderated a subreddit. All links of the leaked content are being removed for fear of obliteration, which I don't know what the obliteration is. I guess Take-Two Interactive is the parent company of Rockstar. I didn't realize that was the case. So yeah, they are definitely acting to remove all the leaks as much as you possibly could. let's activate this and cancel this and see if that works. See, at this point I could discard 2 cards to destroy him, which probably is worth it to do that. Probably better to discard those 2 cards. Yeah, it's not worth summoning that because it doesn't have any attack. So we'll just attack here and hope to win in the next turn. Let's see, Video Games Chronicle says Tokyo's Game Show 2022 attendance was half of that of the 2019 show. Japan's biggest game expo was likely affected by restrictions on younger visits and foreign tourists, which I don't know if they are letting any foreign tourists in at all, and I don't know what the specific restrictions on younger visitors would have been. But yeah, the pandemic is fairly a big COVID hot zone still, and their economies. Elementary school students and younger children were banned from the Tokyo Game Show due to uncertainties of vaccination situations among young people. So yeah, they just don't have a system as far as a vaccine passport for young people. Although I don't know if young kids should have been going to Tokyo Game Show in the first place. The country is still not fully open to overseas visitors. But in general, yeah, I think the economy in Japan was in a bubble for a very long time, and this bubble has been burst. I know that there was a fairly big manga shop, and the way they do their shops tend to be these kind of narrow vertical buildings, so it had like 7 different floors with different types of manga and dojin, which is independent manga, that they were selling, and that shop is shutting down fairly quickly to go digital only, which, you know, kind of makes more sense. Amazon.com really showed that it makes a lot more sense to have books shipped to you than to have a bookstore that you walk through. Bookstores don't make any sense, whereas libraries do make more sense, although even libraries wouldn't make sense if they weren't free. But yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see a very smaller economy, more of a homebody economy than Japan has ever seen before. I wouldn't be surprised if they start trying to get bigger houses because they're spending more times in their houses, because a lot of the houses in Japan are ridiculously small, almost like coffins, and that they start to have bigger kitchens and go out to eat less and go out to drink less, and they stop going to public baths as much, so they start to have bigger bathrooms. The entertainment lifestyle and nightlife lifestyle, or the work yourself to death lifestyle of Japan, all of those could be changed fairly dramatically. Although also in Japan, it may just evaporate and disappear in 100 years or so, that with just people not willing to have kids and not willing to live the way Japanese have been living up until this point. And then our final Video Games Chronicle article for today is once again about the GTA 6 leak. Rockstar has commented on it and claims the project won't be delayed. I don't know why you'd think the game would be delayed. The company said it was disappointed to have details of the game shared in this way, which, okay, fair enough. You can express your opinion as a corporate entity pretending to be a human being and say you're disappointed. But yeah. I mean, this really does just feel like much ado about nothing. Moving on to the Gematsu articles. Genshin Impact 3.1 update. Launches September 28th. Tales of Symphonia Remastered for PS4 and Switch. Gameplay is available if you want to check that out on Gematsu. Let's see, the Street Fighter 6 World Tour opening movie, if you want to check that out. This is a more stylized, almost like canvas oil painting version of that screenshot. And it kind of looks better with that style than it does without that effect on. Although the actual game would not look better that way. And maybe that's something that screenshots and teasers and posters should do, is that the artist should be a little bit more willing to put a photo filter over something and add some grain and make it look different. Although for video games, having it be a little washed out and look like an oil painting directly contradicts with the message that you're trying to sell, that the game is a bright, colorful, very sharply animated game. Hollow Knight Silksong adding a PS5 and PS4 version. Not really a lot of Gematsu articles today either, so we'll burn through them fairly quickly. PSVR games not compatible with PSVR 2. Iron Fury follow-up Phantom Fury has been announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC. Which I don't know if people really even remember Iron Fury. Iron Fury, if I recall correct, was originally Iron Fury, but then they got sued by some famous band for it being too close, and so they changed it to Ion. And inherently, I believe Ion Fury was originally a different project, completely by a different name, and went through some fairly drastic changes in its final version. And this being blurred out with all this darkness is not going to really help. This is very low polygon and really doesn't look that good. A game called Cultic Chapter 1 for PC launches October 13th. Proteus launches September 23rd for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One. I think someone might be knocking at my door, so I'm gonna mute myself and just go check that out. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. It seems like somebody was just slamming a car door and not knocking on my door. Sounded something like that, but whatever. Let's see. A game called Proteus launches September 23rd for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC, which looks like a first-person shooter of some sort. Let's see if we can watch some of the trailer and figure it out. Oh, I see what it was now. Well, I guess I'll have to go outside after this stream and pick that up. They decided to deliver new recycling bins or garbage bins to my street, and so it was the big truck just delivering bins to everybody, which, yeah, they're effectively trying to eliminate jobs by having automated trucks that will automatically pick up the recycling bins instead of having trash men. Which, at a certain level, being a trash man is a very strenuous, bad job, but it is also a bad job that is available to a lot of people that can't get other jobs. I wouldn't be surprised if almost 90% of everybody that's a garbage man has some kind of record conviction of some sort, and that's why they can't get a better job, or they just can't get better jobs because there aren't that many better jobs anymore. And once again, eliminating more doesn't help the little man, certainly. Rise of the Triad Ludicrous Edition has been announced for the PS5, PS4, Xbox One, and Xbox Series, Switch, and PC. I feel like maybe I'd heard of a game called Rise of the Triad, but it feels like it must have been 4 or 5 years at minimum. I don't really recognize these visuals. This does just kind of look like a Doom clone, Quake clone type experience. I don't think I need to watch the trailer on that one. I don't know if I really needed to watch the trailer on the previous one either. Wrath Ion of Ruin launches in the spring of 2023 for the PS4 and 5, Xbox One and Switch, and Series, and PC. I got out of order there, so I try to move around the announcements into one full breath. This is an interesting looking character as far as that boss is, but then you're back to low polygon first person shooting. This looks a little bit better. It almost feels like there was an event of some sort where they were announcing specifically Doom clones and Quake clones. A game called Dogs vs. Cats, that's a real-time strategy game. No, actually, it's a Dogs vs. Cats real-time strategy game called War Pause, has been announced for PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC, noticeably skipping the PS4. I can't help but assume that this is probably trying to be like Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare, except for instead of plants and zombies, it's cats and dogs, and maybe it won't be full of microtransactions like Garden Warfare did. Although it is also having that military aspect to it, and I don't know if a World War I, World War II military aspect is really something that would catch people's attention, particularly people who are interested in cats versus dogs potentially fighting. There was Snoopy versus the Red Baron or something like that, some game that was kind of by that name that came out on the Xbox, I think pretty much digitally only. And even in that case, when there is a history of Snoopy um, imagining himself as a World War II fighter pilot and flying around against the Red Baron, it still didn't quite feel right that you would have the Snoopy characters flying around shooting each other in World War II fighter planes. That's an example of if you were going to try and perhaps commit sacrilege and change some aspects of Snoopy, you would have Snoopy imagine himself not to be a fighter pilot, but have him imagine himself to be something completely different, or just a airline pilot that's flying around the world for fun. Like, you could certainly make him a adventurer going from place to place instead of just fighting people. A game here called Samurai Maiden launches December 1st in Japan and December 8th worldwide. There might be something to this, but maybe not. The art style looks like it could be interesting. This guy is standing on those Japanese wooden block shoes that they used to wear to get through the mud. Yeah, considering the history of the giant wooden block shoes and getting through muddy streets, it's not, I guess, super surprising that everybody takes their shoes off in Japan now and is fairly obsessed about having clean floors. Because that obviously would have been a real problem. It apparently has a Steam page already. I think we may have already even talked about it. This game, Samurai Maiden. Suffice it to say, I've slept over the weekend and played a bunch of games, and because I made some actual progress on doing all of that, I've probably eliminated from my mind a lot of the announcements and trailers and things that happened over the past couple of weeks, which is probably a great thing too, because particularly for Japanese games, they tend to put out trailer after trailer and announcement after announcement. In a lot of ways, this game feels like they are trying to do a spiritual reboot of Oni Chambara, which is not a terrible thought, certainly. Yeah, it definitely feels like it is an Oni Chambara if Oni Chambara was good. Yeah, that was one of the things I said in the beginner's guide too, is that while Oni Chambara was under the category of what they were calling, I believe, Shiza games, which I think literally translates to shit games, in the sense that they knew they didn't have any budget and the games were going to be kind of bad, the terrible games being shown in the beginner's guide doesn't even come close to what they were doing with Oni Chambara. And Oni Chambara, even the first one, was a sellable product. It had gameplay mechanics and concepts and ideas. In the beginner's guide, there's literally one puzzle that's just put in front of you over and over again, and it's open the door with a switch on the outside, close the door with the same switch, and slide through the doorway as the door is closing, and then open a second door with a switch on the other side of that first door, and that is it. That is the entire puzzles you'll run into in the beginner's guide. Well, not really. There is one other little puzzle thing that it literally talks you through. Looks like we're going to potentially have some teasing of a lesbian relationship. Also, this videos and trailers still going to go. Yeah, this is Samurai Maiden. Potentially a new series that might actually catch my attention. I'm going to put this on the follow list, even though it's premature. It definitely could be something. Of course, it could also be nothing. Like, it could play terribly. It could be super short. It could end up getting censored in some weird way to kill its gimmick in the first place. like the schoolgirl outfit here, if say all of a sudden they got rid of the girl being in a schoolgirl outfit because Valve says that we won't sell games with anime girls in schoolgirl outfits, that would suck, certainly. If all of a sudden the characters got turned into like muscle-bound Western animated men, that would lose its gimmick too. I don't know how you would all of a sudden turn the game from Samurai Maiden into a game with 4 male players, but wouldn't be surprised if something like that happened for some game out there. At a certain level, they almost have to go this hard and tease the kissing and all of that just to establish this is our minimum of what we're promising in the game. So we're not going to be pushed back or moved. Of course, this game could also just get canceled completely. But yeah, if I was a developer or producer of a game, I would, and I wanted that game to be mature or even adults only, I would make trailers that are straight up in the trailer going, yes, this game's going to have full nudity, full sex, hardcore penetration will be shown. I would push it as far as possible to say, all right, now we have to actually compromise with a publisher or the service it's on so that we can actually get on those services. But I would definitely negotiate for an extreme amount and hope that I can be approved for 90% of it instead of making vague promises of potentially going a little bit further. I don't think there's ever been a case that has been shown or that I've seen of a game becoming more mature after its initial launch of its series or its initial trailer. Well, the opposite I definitely have seen. Moving on with the Gematsu articles, Earth Defensive Force 4.1, The Shadow of New Despair for Switch launches December 22nd in Japan. The 4.1 is an odd title. Now, you may take note that this is all coming from D3 Publishing, so the Earth Defense Forces games very possibly were in that Shiza game category also, so it's particularly been D3 Publishing or those types of games that we have seen made. Although even at this, you also see that in this logo, D3 Publishing is a subsidiary of Bandai Namco, so that's a little scary too. Although I'm not sure I remember off the top of my head if there's been an example of Bandai Namco censoring any of its products. A big name company is probably more likely to do that just in general. Octopath Traveler 2 has 20 minutes of Tokyo Game Show gameplay if you want to check that out on Gematsu. Honkai Star Rail has its Witness trailer if you want to check that out. Zen Zone Zero, Just Another Day at the Video Store gameplay has been shown. This is one of those games that I think is oddly kind of poorly animated, but I think maybe has more of a fan base. No, I think I might be thinking of a completely different game. Yeah, I don't think I've seen this. I was thinking Zen Zone Zero was a tank game that was poorly animated. This is a dash around beat 'em up hack and slash experience. Well, I guess that probably proves I should watch more of these trailers, particularly when you know the screenshots themselves aren't going to look that good. Yeah, this is a totally different game than what I thought it was going to be, which is evidence certainly that I need to constantly continue to educate myself, and that's why it's so important for me to bother to look at all this news and try and engage with it and ingest it as much as possible. Like, I could certainly go back to being like a regular gamer and just talking about the big games everybody is talking about and be out of the loop as far as any medium and small games. But I don't think that works. I don't think that's the right way to go. I don't think that's the smart way to go for me. And I do enjoy being more informed. So, yeah. And it is almost a pointless endeavor because you'll just never have all the knowledge in your head, but to even have a lot more is better. Learning for the sake of learning alone would be alright. Moving on, Gamatsu says Valkyrie Elysium has an early November update to add a Hilde's Vengeance mode, timed attacks, and high difficulty settings. Not a lot of screenshots here of what Valkyrie Elysium actually looks like, though they're more interested in showing you the concept art than the actual product of the game, although this screenshot in itself is pretty dark, so it's not a great screenshot. Megaton Musashi X launches December 1st in Japan, and I assume by the looks of this is a robot fighting game. Mech fighting game. Mech fighting a giant tank game with hack and slash beat 'em up abilities, which that's not really what you usually see in a mech game. Usually you're shooting guns. And there might be a slight twist to that, but this really is still just a hack and slash game. It's just that the things you're fighting are mechs and people in mechs, it looks like. That may be a little too Japanese to catch my attention. The next Final Fantasy 16 trailer is likely due out in October, says the producer. I think we mentioned that before. Infinity Strash. Is it Strash or Stash? And that's a misspelling, I wonder. Stash would make more sense. Whatever. Dragon Quest The Adventures of Dai details its gameplay modes, growth systems, and Tokyo Game Show 2022 trailer. We can see it's a JRPG. More and more I think these bright light explosions whenever you do an attack is starting to really irritate me when seeing those in games. Although it's more when I see them in screenshots, I would say, than even when I see them in games. I tend not to really pay attention when I see them in games. But at a certain level I almost wonder if the point of having the bright light explosions in games is to make the player mentally blink and just not even look at the animations for a few seconds. How much of it is really just creating filler content to keep the player playing a little bit longer. I definitely felt that in the beginner's guide too, is that like the first 4 hours or so definitely felt like filler content to get the player to play more, play the game longer, when you could have told the same story in a much shorter amount of time. Moving on, Sin Duality details its world and its characters. So you got an anime girl and a clone of the anime girl with different colored hair and more black on the outside, white on the inside, where she's white on the outside with her jacket and red on the inside. Which that doesn't really say much of anything to start with. Pretty visuals. And then what the actual game looks like looks fairly different from the still art, or maybe even that's from the concept art, or possibly a opening cutscene. So you can see the girl is wearing some kind of armor. I don't know if there would ever be a scenario where armor around the crotch would feel good for any gender. Even if you were like riding a motorcycle or in a mech that would have been the equivalent of riding a motorcycle, and there was just massive impacts when you're jumping in and out of a mech, that feels like that would still not be enough armor to work. Generally, I imagine armor only really works is if it can take a blow and deflect it as far in different directions around the armor, and potentially even like a chest plate being hit by a spear, taking the force of that and sending it in waves, shock waves around towards the back, and pushing a lot of the force just behind the human that you're trying to protect there. And even in this armor, if this is armor, you're not really going to get that. See, and then we have a guy who has way too many belts, standard anime trope. So it's all fairly generic anime stuff. And then pink armed robot with a gun. Seems a little crazy. Oh, I do think I have seen this game before. Probably just a couple days ago. But I still don't feel like I have a full understanding of what it is. I don't think they've told us yet. The game Runia Fairy Tale of the Forgotten Runes remake has a concept trailer. Which, concept trailer around a remake is an interesting idea, but it's also probably a huge waste of time, so I'm going to skip it. This week's Japanese game releases. They have the Diofield Chronicles, Juzaingi Ingetsu Sangokuden 1 and 2 for the Switch, My Teen Romance Comedy Snafu Game Collection, Necromundia Hired Gun, Taiko no Tatsujin Rhythm Festival, and Valis the Phantasm Soldier Collection 2. Digitally only, not really a lot more being listed here. Usually the digital only releases are super long, so if there is an effect of something like the Tokyo Game Show, it's that nothing really gets announced during the Tokyo Game Show as far as digital only games, or even really a lot of physical games, which I kind of was leaning to think the exact opposite would happen. Although we may also see that this article just gets updated and then all of a sudden there's a whole bunch more games that are being talked about. And then apparently the House of the Dead remake is coming to the Xbox Series in September 23rd. This is the non-typing version of the gun game, which inherently I guess I need to own House of the Dead remake and then House of the Dead typing so I could show off the typing game but then play the real game. I think that is the smarter way to go about that than anything else. Alright, and then let's now start looking at games that came out on Steam. I don't know if there's going to be particularly a lot of games that came out this weekend, but there's a possibility of that. Platform Puzzler, no, I think I'm going to say no to that one too. I still have the adult content tag toggled, and I think it probably is the right move. Until I get in trouble with YouTube, I'm just probably going to try and push my luck and have the adult content tag always enabled so that I can look at every single game that comes out on Steam and consider them all, even if the vast majority of them are bad, particularly the adult games are bad. I have a magnetism game. There was a magnetism game before that I tried to play, and its story was a little rough and the puzzles weren't great. I'll give this a chance, but visually this doesn't feel like it has a high chance of success. I guess the question is, does a game like this potentially deserve a YouTube short? This feels a lot like QUBE just under a different name 10 years later. Here we have a VR game of some sort that looks too much like an art piece to really interest me. 5-minute immersive 3D OF music video. I don't know what 3 dimensions of fields. I don't know what the F stands for. But yeah, I couldn't possibly follow a music video. Notably, also this is tagged as VR and or 360 video. 3 dimensions of freedom, perhaps, is what it stands for. I couldn't possibly criticize a music video as being sold as a video game other than to say that's a really dumb idea, and I hope nobody else decides to do that. Seemingly, the publisher developer is doing this for several singers, although I don't recognize these names, so these might be like French or Latin American. I guess French would be what I would guess. So this might be a French company thinking about doing that. Noticeably though, it's not saying anything about actually working with VR. So yeah, I don't think it actually works with the HTC Vive or anything like that, even though it is tagged as VR. I think it's actually more of a flat 2D game. Yep, and we have another one of these. They've just put them all on the website at the same time. If they'd staggered this between a couple of days, and this is English and French again, I would have probably almost applauded that as an idea, but just dumping them on the same day and flooding the Steam market seems dumb. And if anything, it gives off the feeling that they are just abandoning the game on Steam. Alright, let's see. This looks like this might very well be a frustration platforming game, or one of those platformers where you just are gonna die constantly even if you try really hard. Yeah, seeing just this entire level of rocks floating across the screen is ridiculous. Yeah, I think I'm gonna say no to that because I don't feel like that's the type of experience I would want to have. It's just a frustration experience. There we go. Alright, well, Cyber FUCK 2069 is again listed, so I guess maybe it was pre-order before, and I can see now with 151 reviews, which is kind of a massive amount of reviews, that it is only getting 69% positive. So unless they were reviewing for the meme of keeping it balanced at 69%, I imagine it is a garbage game. Let me scroll down and see if I can see a negative review. Fastest refund in the West. I got scammed. There's no sex. Kinda good. Huge scam. Wave-based combat. Then you get a cheap hentai gifs. What a scam. Waste of time. Sadly went through vigorous emotional abuse to see nothing. What's interesting is they're saying that there's no sex when every single screenshot on this, except for one, is showing a CG 3D model sex scene. But yeah, it's bait and switch, definitely, and this is definitely the type of game that should be flagged and removed from Steam, just on the fact that in the first 30 days, in fact in the first 2 days, it's gotten such a huge amount of mixed reviews. Somebody should be looking at that and saying, wait a minute, there's a problem here. Like, but alas, they're doesn't seem to be anybody at Valve that cares once they allow something on there. Particularly, they don't care if, as long as it's 3D adult looking characters and more of a Western animation style, they don't care at all. Speaking of garbage games, here we have Princess Akazan X Princess, which looks like it's an adult game, but mostly is just an RPG Maker game, and says it's coming soon, but also doesn't really give any indication that it actually is going to have adult content in it. Nightmare of the Purge doesn't look like anything. Space Bandit doesn't look good enough. Hell Escape is a top-down twin-stick shooter. Might be good enough, but really not good enough to interest me. I guess if you had low standards and hadn't played potentially better versions of a top-down twin-stick shooter, this looks barely passable. Let's see, Divinia Chronicles Relics of Gan T. This is interesting, kind of rough animation style balanced out with rough soft CG style 3D modeling. Yeah, if you told me this was an independent RPG game, I almost might consider it. But then the problem there is, once again, you have Japanese RPGs, Eastern RPGs that just look amazingly pretty, and then when you have a Westerner company trying to do it, they just don't have artists at all. Nobody has art skill, even amongst the professional artists, to draw something that looks interesting, or the 3D model anything that looks interesting. This is English, German, and Hungarian as far as the languages go, so that definitely is a more Western game. You know what? I'm gonna give it a follow and give it a chance. It says it's infusing Zelda with classic JRPGs like Secret of Mana. I'll give it a chance. Probably shouldn't make a YouTube short around it, but whatever. Memories Abyss Chapter 0 is probably a prologue, so it's probably no because of that. It's not coming soon anyways and doesn't look like anything. Voice of Chernobyl. Looks like it's probably nothing, just an asset flip. But yeah, speaking of asset flips, if this is really what the level of something can be, and I still would call it an asset flip, this is probably 100 times better than any of the games in the beginner's guide. Even if the beginner's guide games were like game jam games that were only really worked on for 2 days, they are just awful. Lovers Anonymous here looks like it's a Western visual novel. It doesn't look terrible. I almost would excuse this art style as being a style decision and not bad animation. It's free, so I guess check out this visual novel if you're interested. 1 to 3 hours playtimes, 3 CGs, which is not a lot. 3 backstories, 2 characters, 4 endings. That's really simplistic, and if anything, it highlights that there is going to be, in comparison to most visual novels, a wall of text compared to the number of images. Although these are not considered images when they say CGs. There's not really a CG here that they're even showing. Yeah, not really enough of a game there to make it to the wish list though, and since it's free, there's really no reason to do that. Blueprint looks like a simplistic platforming game where maybe you're making the platforming itself and trying to help the character get from point A to point B, making conveyor belts and things. The blue on white art color palette here is not going to be good enough. That looks pretty bad. I don't know if there really is a science behind blueprints and the idea of something being white on the foreground and blue in the background. Actually, I don't think blueprints are actually like that. I think blueprints are kind of blue on the background and black or red on the foreground. But I don't know if there's a specific reason why blueprints are blue other than when they are blue. I imagine a lot of them are not blue. Well, yeah. I actually took an architectural class, and the blueprints that we would have printed out on the giant plotter printers, I don't believe were blue at all. I think they were just giant white pieces of paper with black ink printed on them. I don't know if there's a lot of value even in making blueprints these days, other than to claim copyright on blueprints. Although it's probably a lot more useful to builders for them to have a blueprint instead of something digital that would be a bigger issue, certainly. Like being able to just have this giant printout that you can make notes on and draw and point out to other people, and have people looking over your shoulders and seeing the same giant printout probably gives a level of convenience compared to, say, a book where you're not likely to need somebody to see the words that you're reading on a book or look over your shoulder and read along with you. Well, we've got about 40 more games, and unless we start running into a whole bunch of adult games, there is notably going to be not that many adult games that actually got released this weekend. This game, Sisterhood, feels like it could be an adult game, but it could just be a collection of 3D models trying to be something. Violence, frequent nudity, sexual content, and more other mature topics. So yeah, this Sisterhood game is supposed to be maybe a visual novel, maybe a shooter. It's promising a lot, but a lot of this does just look like it's also asset flip stuff. And it's not in the adult section, and it's coming soon. It says September 18th, but is the release date, but today is the 19th, so I can hit reload, but that's not going to change anything. I guess that means I probably need to make a new rule that if something has a release date up here, but it still says coming soon down here, then that is evidence of a lack of confidence in the developer, a lack of honesty in the developer, or skill in their developer to do the right thing. Certainly also there are some major red flags that this looks like it's going to try and sell itself on being adult content and not really have a game and just be another bait and switch game, which the vast majority of the adult games are kind of bait and switch games. So, but yeah, specifically if we're past the date and it's still not out, it's gotta go. Here we have Fix My Cat Doc, which looks like it's a mobile game ported. I'd be willing to give that a chance. I imagine little kids might be into that. So, and that's when I could probably do a YouTube short on. Although at a certain level, why not just have a veterinary game where you have cats and dogs instead of potentially trying to sell it? Here we have something that I don't know if I can even really call it an RPG maker, but it is a very rough animation style. I almost would give it a pass on the animation style if the actual gameplay animation style looked better. If there was just an animator that drew people that way, I wouldn't hate that, but I definitely hate this. And the fact that you have like a girl lying on a bench next to a table doesn't make a lot of sense, and having this white dress blend in with the white bench so you can barely even see her doesn't make sense. So that's going to be a pass. We have a game called Thelios, which... I'm probably getting desperate at this point to put this on the follow list, but I'll do it. Well, actually, let's not do it. A, because that didn't work, but also because, come to look at it, it says September 2022. Yeah. Let's see. Nutty Motor Cars. Looks like it's just a car racing game. Early access. Is this really a game that deserves to be on early access? No, but we'll give it a chance. Jump. Yeah, we're really desperate today. Mimic Love, visual novel clicker. I'm gonna go over here and just assume that this is an adult content game. No, it's not really. 3 Men, 1 Destiny, What Will Happen? Visual novel. Definitely seems like that's kind of what it is, although it's oddly trying to use 3D environments and walking around more almost like a adventure game or a walking simulator. English, Spain, Spanish. I'll give this a follow. Just because I'd like to see what people's responses are on that. Cage of Ethan. We're seeing far too many of these bad animations today. Like usually you see 1 or 2. I feel like I've seen 5 or 6 already. Again, it's free, and again, I can't really recommend it to anybody. Just the point of a visual novel is that first word, visual. It's supposed to look good also, otherwise just write a novel. The ignorance irritates me a lot. This looks like it might be a decent mobile game port. That artists are out there drawing very poorly and think they're doing a good job. That's really irritating. Now, I'm a critic and I've just seen a lot of different art styles, and I have my own personal preferences as far as what I think is good, certainly, so that may jade me a little bit, but I don't think I'm so off from an average person's assessment, even somebody who doesn't know anything about art, when I say some of these games look like they've been drawn by somebody who's never taken a drawing class, or somebody who has no drawing skill even if they have taken classes, or somebody who's barely drawn for a year or two. Inherently, we need, in the West, not just the United States, but all over, I'll give this a chance as a VR game. VR football, I haven't actually seen that many VR American football games. Like, we need to get kids to be drawing a lot more often, a lot more. As much as they're playing video games, maybe we should force a system of draw 1 picture or write 1 short story. You have to do something creative for an hour of video game gameplay. Just because you shouldn't just be consuming creativity of others and not contributing or creating your own thing. So yeah, that would be an interesting rule that I'm sure kids would hate, but it's not super crazy either. It's better than saying you have to do an hour of extra homework or read an extra chapter in a book to play an hour of video games. But yeah, drawing specifically, kids need to be way more encouraged to do that. They need to be drawing or making progress on a drawing every single day. And that's for just every average kid, not people that are obsessed with becoming an artist since they could first speak. At the very least, most people should be able to draw something similar to this art style at minimum. This looks like it's a match 3 game, although maybe it's not so much as it might be a stealth game. It says it's a match 3 game. Well, this looks a little different as a match 3 game, and that kind of intrigues me. And like I said, the art style here is not terrible. It's not great. Or it's not my personal favorite, but not incredibly terrible. Then we have one called Evening Vibes, which looks like it might be an adult game. So let me double check that. No. Find the girl, escape the terrible demon, solve the riddle of this place. This might be kind of just a low effort asset flip horror game. It's English and Russian. Although oddly, English and Russian set in an atmospheric Chinese town, but it doesn't have full Chinese audio. Yeah, it would be hard to really speculate as far as how businesses in Russia and China are feeling about each other at the moment, but there was a small pipeline deal or railroad deal that was made where China has made some agreements to bypass Russia using railroads to get to Central Europe, I believe. I'm not sure if it really is a huge amount of products are actually going to go through those railroads, and I don't know if any of it's really an oil pipeline deal. At some level, it could just be all facade, and it could be oil or products coming out of Russia to China, and then out of China as Chinese products. Also, Ukraine actively called out the president of Mexico because apparently the president of Mexico has gotten a lot of support from Russia. So we're perhaps dangerously getting close to countries taking sides in a larger conflict potentially happening. I don't think this game Evening Vibes is showing me quite enough as a concept of what the game is. The idea of just finding a girl and just wandering around feels too much like a hidden object game, so I think I have to say no to that. Here we have an adult game, Miss Kawaii, Kawaii. Although it is an adult game, it is also showing me two characters that again are not really animated in anything I would actually call an anime style. The actual game seems to be a almost Sudoku like puzzle, if we show that off. Yeah, very simplistic Sudoku like puzzles. Yeah, and yeah, this is the art style of the character, and that's just not an anime art style that I would, or something I would call an anime art style. It supports English, Japanese, Korean, and Chinese. It says it has 44 levels of relaxing puzzles, 11 charming girls, relaxing music, high quality art. So, not really selling a lot for $2.69. Let's see. Next we have One More Dungeon 2. I'm not sure if I ever decided whether I wanted to play One More Dungeon 1. I think One More Dungeon 1 is actually pretty good. It's just not something that I think I ever could convince myself that I wanted to play. And I think I can see why. If we look at One More Dungeon 1, it is going for more of a pixely art style as a dungeon action crawler, and that was probably just too much of a turnoff. Overall, it's teetering at 73%, on SteamDB or 79% inside of Steam itself. But One More Dungeon 2 is going for more of a soft sell CGI appearance. And I'm still not sure I really would want to play this type of game though. The first person perspective I think might be wrong there. I don't think this game supports VR, so it being in first person is just a style choice. I'll give it a chance though, and I'll certainly think that deserves at least a YouTube short. So we'll go that far. Here we have what looks like our only parkour game of the day, with an asset flip parkour game called Locomotion. Here we have a game called Look Inside Chapter 2, which, let's see if we can find Look Inside Chapter 1. Look Inside Chapter 1 is rated very positively. So, you know what I'll do is I'll put this on the follow list for Chapter 1. And then I will come over here and put Chapter 2 on the follow list also. And then I don't think there needs to be a YouTube short around that one either. Try to hold it to some standard. Next we have a game called Hyper Demon, which looks like a collection of weird visual effects more than anything. And then we have Rogue Genesia. So we got about 4 adult games, and none of them were Eastern games. Like over the weekend, it was the percentage wise as far as Eastern style adult games and Western style adult games was very close to what I suspected it should have been, with it being much more to Eastern games. And if the theory is that they only release if they only release Eastern games potentially once every 2 weeks on the weekend, well, that may have been that point in which those games were allowed, because we got nothing today otherwise between the stream on Friday and now. And so, yeah, I'm still trying to get a general idea of how often this is going to happen. Although, in all fairness, even the Cyber 2069 adult game, that game we saw twice, both on Friday and today, with its actual release happening over the weekend. There was another game that I reported, and I wanted to hop back to that and see what happened there, because I left that game on the list. Yes, here it was. Plan B, Goddess cards, and then here is a Destiny Child image that they stole. So I'm gonna hit the reload page and see if the game is still here, which it is. It now has 4 reviews and is at 59%. The flag button that I flagged it is no longer darkened in. All 4 reviews here. Language, all languages. Yeah, almost certainly a negative review here is mentioning it that the art is stolen from Destiny Child. But can't really tell. Sufficient to say, I think that is probably an interesting aspect to check on and see if it takes it a week, 2 weeks, a month, forever for Valve to decide or realize that the game literally has stolen content. And that is a unique experience for us because very rarely can I 100% guarantee that it has stolen content in it for certain, because I know for a fact Shift Up, the makers of Destiny Child, would not have just sold their art like this and not advertised it, because they did sell their art to another game, Destiny Child Defense War, and they spent a lot of effort advertising it and pointing it out. Moving on with the GameDeveloper.com news. The Roblox game Adopt Me ends its Netherlands service. We already talked about that. The Yakuza franchise is now called Like a Dragon. Sega has confirmed. This is to keep consistency with the franchise's name in Japan, and I think almost certainly to appease the actual Yakuza in Japan. Although I almost certainly wouldn't be surprised if the Yakuza series may have been called Like a Dragon originally anyways. Like they're making some comparisons in this article. In Japan, the series is known as Ryu ga Gotoku, aka Like a Dragon. Outside of Japan, Sega's crime franchises have been known as Yakuza since the original game debuted in 2016 to better illustrate what the games were about. It's not every day that franchises change their names, and perhaps the closest example is when Activision added the Call of Duty onto Modern Warfare 2, as brand awareness for it was much lower without the logo. So I guess technically they're saying in Japan it has always been Like a Dragon. So I don't feel like this is much of a retcon. Also, not really much of a controversy is going to come from changing the name much. Because there isn't really that much love, I think, for the name of the Yakuza series as much as the characters and stories of the Yakuza series. Let's see, GameDeveloper.com also says that Cyberpunk 2077 got a player increase on Steam after the Edge Runner's debut. And then Sony confirming the VR2 not being backwards compatible. Disney Dreamlight Valley hit 1 million players in its first 10 days. It's in early access at the moment. But yeah, there definitely is a fandom for Disney things still. So not super surprising it succeeded, even though I'm still not 100% sure that Dreamlight Valley actually has enough of a game experience in it. Let's see, Tencent apparently bought another company, or more accurately, they picked up a minority stake in the Mordhau developer Triturnion. I'm not sure if Mordhau really succeeded as a game, though. So, that may have been a cheap purchase compared to other companies. And then, Rockstar confirms that the hacker penetrated systems and stole GTA 6 footage. Is there an actual description as to how the hack went? We recently suffered a network intrusion in which an unauthorized third party illegally accessed and downloaded confidential information from our system, is all they're going to say. Which, yeah. More and more, that's probably he socially engineered somebody for the VPN credentials and just remotely logged into the local network and then downloaded probably unencrypted shared files that were accessible to everybody. Inherently, you could simply have just been a game tester and walked up to some computer you weren't supposed to touch to copy some files via USB drive. It could be something as simplistic as that, and that would still fall under a similar description. Alright, we've got our fall list cleanup, so let's do this. Here we have a game called Unbeatable White Label. It learns a song, exclusive side story set in the world of D-Cell Games' upcoming rhythm adventure game. So I guess the question here is, I guess we're going in circles around that, aren't we? Yeah, this game is a free demo for another game that's not even on Steam yet. And it's overwhelmingly positive. And as a video game critic, that feels like an odd choice to potentially decide to play a demo for a game for free when it's supposed to be advertisement for something else. On a certain level, I feel like I have to say leave this on the fall list until the final product is available, and then I have more of a reason to actually play this. But yeah, I guess I'm making an exception. Also, you have the whole pandemic issue, certainly, where this came out in 2021, and if I tried to like look at the news on this, that'd be fairly hard to do because I have like news tabs blocked. There was an Unbeatable Invitationals on August 6th, 2022, and then August 7th, 2022. So yeah, recent events and news have kind of been going on still. They're definitely trying to get people interested. Art contests. So the fandom of people playing this game as a demo seems to be fairly high. There was a patch in March. So I guess that's enough of a justification to say yes to this. Here we have a horror game called Unbearable. So we're at the U's, which means we're not too far away from wrapping around, and my coding actually is not programmed to do that, so I will have to manually wrap around back to the A's in my macro when we hit the end. And yeah, I definitely think some changes might be made to the fall list by the time I wrap around a second time and hit Z a second time. This Unbearable game needs some more time, although looking at the reviews, it's pretty low. But I'll give it a little bit more time since it's fairly new. Ultravina. Ultria. It's barely over the 30 reviews at 39, but it's all very positive, so this can make it to the wish list. Just make sure it's not in early access. Ultra Wings 2. With Nintendo bringing back Pilot Wings 64, there might be less of an argument to thinking about a game like Ultra Wings. It's still in early access and requires VR. But if you did have VR, Ultra Wings here might be the right one to go with. Although I'd probably say check out Ultra Wings 1, and assuming it exists, and playing that first while this is still in early access. Ultra Clash 5. Not sure why I would have put this on the fall list. It looks kind of silly. Maybe that's why. Sandbox anime action game. I'll leave that on the fall list. Ultra Hat Dimension. Puzzle game with adorable hats. From 2020. Looks like it might be a block pushing game, sort of. Regardless, it needs to leave the fall list. It doesn't meet the requirements. Ultimate Starfighter. I'll give it some more time as a widescreen Galaga clone. Although, I don't know if I really want to play a Galaga clone just because it's widescreen. Ultimate Racer 2D2 is still in early access from 2021. Should I get rid of it? Probably. Yeah, I think yes. Like, early access, nearly a year long. Early access really should be 6 months at most. Ultimate Fishing Simulator 2, mostly positive. Still in early access, but that deserves more time. Ultimate Atom, Caverns of Chaos. Doesn't really look like anything that would interest me in the first place, so we'll get rid of that. And then our last game from the fall list today, Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts. Is this a VR game? No, but it's an early access game. I'll give it a little bit more time, maybe 6 more months, but if it's not out of early access, at that point I'll get rid of it. Navy ships and naval combat does have a small fandom that might be interested in that niche, although I don't know if I really want to cover a game that's in that niche. So that would be potentially a thing to think about, is whether I really want to play that game. Alright, so it looks like we're going to wrap up today almost exactly at 3 hours. We were getting Sniper Ranger in particular on the chat almost every single stream, and noticeably he wasn't here today. So hopefully I haven't lost a chatty fan quite yet, but frankly that turns out to be the case very often on YouTube, is you get somebody who's a fan for a few weeks, few days, few months even, and then they get bored and move on, or their life changes. It's not surprising. YouTube. One of the things I want to do as far as YouTube, and I should mention this, is that there is an AI art generator that is free that you can run on your own computer called Diffuse Suppression or something like that. That's not really the name. I have the tab open though. But I'm gonna at some point try to make a install it and play around with it and see if I could make all new art for my channel using AI generated art. That would be interesting, certainly, if we can get a consistent style. And that's really what it's going to come down to, is can I get a consistent style that looks good? And particularly, can I get art that actually works with YouTube? Because I might make beautiful paintings that look like oil paintings and Mona Lisas and things like that, and it may just not be the bright, colorful, zoom in on a human face, put a red circle around something, clickbait videos that, thumbnails that YouTube wants. And it's probably an insane, massive undertaking to try to put new thumbnails on old videos, so that almost certainly would never happen. I'd have to actually become successful and make some money on YouTube, have 1,000 subscribers, things like that, 10,000 watch hours, get monetized, run ads, as minimal as I can do without irritating my fan base. But yeah, if I could hire somebody at some point, maybe then I could say somebody's job besides me would be to upload new thumbnails for all of the videos. Even at that, if it was going to make AI generated thumbnails for each series, I don't know if there's a great system, since my series are serialized and it's just episode 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. If I want to potentially just have perhaps very inconsistent images and thumbnails from episode 1 to episode 2, or if the system can really just say, give me 100 variations of the same image, and would that look good, and would that really work? Yeah, there's a lot of questions around it, whether it really would work. And so, but that is on the back of my head, but that is also probably a project that needs to happen at least in January, when I am past doing other projects. And then the only new news that came out while we were streaming is that the Dreadout developer Digital Happiness has announced an RPG called Graveless for the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Now, I don't remember what Dreadout is. I kind of feel like Dreadout was that horror Pac-Man game where you're collecting purple crystals that had this interesting, like, bad girl character. But what I'm seeing here, as far as what this game looks like, this looks way more polished. Graveless. Excuse me as I'm coughing. And we'll watch this trailer, which, yeah, that looks gory. Yeah, this looks way more ambitious than the game, the Pac-Man game where you're running around being chased by enemies. This full-on feels like an attempt at a very dark visuals, Dark Souls type game, with multiple playable characters, it seems, and probably dungeon crawling and arena fights in an open world. I don't think it is so much a case of, yeah, arena fights in kind of an arena, not really an open world, is what I should say. I don't think it really is going to be an open world, but there are some areas, certainly. The thing about this in particular is this feels very ambitious, very ambitious. Right, so it's probably not worth it to put this quite on the fall list. They're promising it will come out before, I guess, 2030. Just as I'm about to wrap up, Jeremiah Moxley comes on the chat to say hi, so I'll say hi back. Let's check what else Digital Happiness made. I guess I'm wrong about what Dreadout is. Dreadout is a different horror game, which that makes a lot more sense than the game I was thinking about. I also have Dread Haunt as a game. Dreadout Keepers of the Dark, Dreadout I own. So is there anything even? Dread Eye VR. So they were going for this whole series. They have a Dreadout 2. Dread Haunt. Let's see what Dread Haunt is. Also, it's a co-op player versus player experience. which is not really my style. So definitely ambitious here, like to say the same thing over and over again. This is them getting away from the Dreadout series, which arguably horror games probably shouldn't stay in the same series. Plus, this Dreadout series seems to be more Japanese monsters and Japanese go escaping monsters, which is probably more of a horror adventure game, looking at the tags, than what Graveless wants to be, which seems to be more of a horror action game. So I could see the name change for that. What's sad, though, I will say, is that I have this game in my library. I did not know I had the game in my library, and I did not play the game for this October month when I could have. So, yeah, that's annoying. Jeremiah Moxley, his last post, because I'm about to wrap up, says, "How's your day going?" And then he does an emoji, I think, of a queen. The chat is pretty small. My day's going perfectly fine, and I really don't have anything else to say about it. It's not like anything really has happened other than me waking up and starting the stream and talk about video game news. That's going to be it for this stream. Thanks for asking, though, anyways. Jeremiah Huxley, I should say that. That's going to be it for this stream. I will try and spend the rest of the day, I imagine, playing Darksiders 3. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, you can click on the link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.